Every carton of eggs in a supermarket represents a story that never had to be told, because half of it was cut short before it ever began. For every hen laying eggs in a barn today, there was, at some point, a brother, a genetically identical male chick, hatched from the same batch, under the same lamp, on the same day, and yet, within hours of hatching, that brother was almost certainly dead. Not from disease, not from neglect, but as a matter of routine, built into the very architecture of how eggs are produced. This is not a hidden scandal, buried in some obscure corner of agriculture. It is standard operating procedure across the global egg industry, repeated roughly 7 billion times a year, and the reason it happens has less to do with cruelty for its own sake, and more to do with an unforgiving, biological and economic logic that most people have never been asked to look at directly. The common assumption is that this is simply how chickens work, that half of them are naturally destined to be useless, as if nature designed male chickens to be a byproduct. That assumption is wrong, and understanding why reveals the entire system. A chicken's usefulness to the food industry is not a fixed biological fact. It is the result of a century of selective breeding that split the species into two increasingly specialized, increasingly incompatible lineages. There is the broiler chicken, engineered purely to convert feed into breast meat as fast as physically possible, and there is the layer hen, engineered purely to convert feed into eggs day after day, with almost nothing left over for growing muscle. These two lineages have been bred so far apart from each other that a male layer chick is, from a production standpoint, neither one thing or the other. He cannot lay eggs because he is male, and he grows too slowly, with too little meat on his frame, to be worth raising for meat, because that trait was bred out of his lineage generations ago, in favor of maximizing egg output in the females. He is not defective. He is precisely engineered, just engineered for a purpose that does not exist. To understand the mechanism at the heart of this, it helps to picture two separate assembly lines. That used to be one. Decades ago, a single breed of chicken was expected to do both jobs reasonably well, lay a decent number of eggs, and grow into a decent amount of meat. That chicken was a generalist, a jack of all trades and master of none. Modern industrial agriculture does not reward generalists. It rewards specialists. Because specialization is what drives efficiency at scale, so breeders split the chicken genome into two increasingly extreme specialties, running in parallel for so many generations, that they essentially became two different tools, built for two different jobs. Feed a modern layer hen, and she puts almost all of that energy into producing an egg roughly once a day, for months on end, with remarkable metabolic efficiency. Feed a modern broiler chicken, and it converts that energy into muscle mass at a rate unmatched in the history of poultry farming. But hand a bag of feed to a male layer chick, and you get an animal that is expensive to raise, slow to grow, and produces meat that industrial buyers do not want, because it does not meet the specifications the market has been engineered around. He sits in an uncomfortable gap between two optimized systems, useful to neither. This is where the economics stop being abstract and start becoming brutal. A hatchery operates on thin margins and enormous volume, processing tens of thousands of eggs a day. Every single one of those eggs costs money to incubate, whether it hatches a future egg-laying hen or a male chick with no commercial destination. From the moment of hatching, that male chick begins accumulating cost. He needs feed, heat, water, space, and labor, all of which are calculated in fractions of a cent, multiplied across millions of birds. If he were raised to slaughter weight, he would take longer to mature than a broiler chicken bred specifically for that purpose, eat considerably more feed per pound of meat gained, and yield a smaller, less desirable carcass. At the end of it, in an industry where profit margins are measured in tenths of a cent per bird, that calculation is not close. Raising male layer chicks for meat costs more than the meat is worth. Faced with that math, hatcheries made the same decision independently all over the world, which is why this outcome looks less like a conspiracy and more like convergent evolution. Under identical economic pressure, the chicks are sorted by sex. Within hours of hatching, the females are sent on to become future egg layers, and the males are culled, usually through rapid mechanical or gas-based methods. Intended to be quick, it is not a decision made out of malice. It is a decision made by spreadsheets, repeated at a scale of billions. It is worth stepping back to see how recent this entire predicament actually is. Because for most of human history, this problem simply did not exist. Before industrial breeding split the chicken into hyper-specialized lineages, most chickens were dual-purpose animals, raised on small farms, where both sexes had an economic role. Hens laid eggs, and when their egg production slowed, they were eaten. Roosters were raised for meat, since there was no such thing as a chicken breed too inefficient to bother feeding. A farmer in the early 20th century would have found the entire premise of a male chicken with no purpose almost incomprehensible, because in a world without extreme specialization, every chicken justified its own feed bill, one way or another. The shift began in earnest in the mid-20th century, accelerated by breeding competitions, and later by genetic science, as agriculture chased the same efficiency gains that transformed nearly every other part of food production. The dual-purpose chicken was gradually replaced by two specialist lineages, precisely because specialization produced more eggs and more meat per unit of feed than any generalist breed ever could. It was, by every efficiency metric the industry measures itself against, a triumph. It also happened to strand half of every layer hatch in an economic dead end that did not exist 100 years earlier. In recent years, that dead end has started to narrow, not primarily through public pressure, though that pressure has certainly mattered, but through a genuine technological workaround. In-ovo sexing allows hatcheries to determine a chick's sex before it hatches, sometimes as early as the first week of incubation, using methods ranging from hormone detection in egg fluid to spectroscopic imaging through the shell. If a male egg is identified early enough, it never has to hatch into a living, breathing animal at all, which changes the ethical calculus considerably. Germany, France, and Austria have already made the traditional culling method illegal, forcing their hatcheries to adopt this technology outright. Italy, Switzerland, and several other countries have set their own phase-out deadlines. Some producers in the United States and elsewhere have adopted the technology voluntarily, betting that consumers will pay a small premium for eggs produced this way. The economics have not fundamentally changed, meaning the underlying problem, that male layer chicks have no viable commercial use, has not been solved. So much is relocated earlier in the timeline, but it illustrates something important about how these systems evolve. They are not fixed laws of nature, they are the product of specific breeding choices and specific cost structures, and when either of those shifts, even slightly, the entire outcome can shift with it. What this story ultimately reveals is not really about chickens at all. It is about what happens when optimization is pursued without limit. Every act of selective breeding is a kind of negotiation between what an organism naturally is and what humans want it to become, and the chicken has been pushed further into that negotiation than almost any other animal on the planet, in splitting one adaptable, general-purpose bird into two narrow specialists. The industry gained extraordinary efficiency in egg and meat production, cheaper food, faster growth, higher yields, benefits that ripple outward into affordability for billions of people. But efficiency, taken to its logical extreme, tends to eliminate anything that does not serve the specific function it was optimized for, and biology does not always cooperate neatly with that goal. A chicken cannot simply choose to be female and an economic system built around only wanting females inevitably has to decide what to do with the other half of every hatch. The male layer chick is not a mistake in the system. He is a precise, predictable output of a system that was never designed with a use for him in mind. Understanding that distinction is really the point of looking closely at stories like this one. The strange, uncomfortable outcomes of modern food production are rarely the result of anyone intending cruelty. They are usually the visible edge of an optimization process so thorough that it leaves no room for anything it did not explicitly plan for. A reminder that whenever humans reshape a living system for efficiency, something on the margins of that plan almost always gets left behind.